The final week of the preseason is upon us. What can we expect this week? And what did Don Waddell said in the Hurricanes mailbag? We'll talk about all that in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the lovely folks over at GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I've used that before, and I loved it. So, the final week of the preseason is upon us, folks. And, I know we haven't really been talking a lot. I've had a lot going on, but, they have two games on October 5th and 6th, respectively. The 5th at Nashville, the 6th at home against Nashville. And Wednesday, tomorrow, is their final practice day that is listed. I mean, something may happen. They may decide to do something else, but that is right now the final practice day. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. They still have 46 guys on the roster right now, so there are going to be more roster cuts coming at some point. Now, Rod Brind'amour was asked about that. The mainstays that have only played one game, they'll need to get up to game speed. So you can probably figure we're going to see, like Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, Jacob Slavin, those guys, the guys that are going to be on the roster. We're going to see those guys in at least one of those games. Wouldn't surprise. I would probably lean more towards, just the one game, honestly. And, just these are preseason games. They really don't mean anything for those guys. It's really just getting them up to game speed. Honestly, if I had to put money on it, I would probably say they would be playing in that October 6th game. The final preseason game is honestly what I'm thinking, but who knows? I don't get paid to do that stuff. I don't get paid to make the roster or the lineup for games and whatnot. That's up to Rod Brind'amour and his coaching staff. But that's what I would say. But again, how they decide to shake that out, that remains to be seen. But really, what the big thing is the final assessments for those guys that are trying to make roster spots. One standout that we've had over the preseason has been Felix Sorum. He was drafted back in June, and he's really stood out this preseason. We'll talk about him more over the course of the episode when we talk about what the opening night roster might end up looking like. So that's going to be fun to see. He's kind of becoming the breakout prospect of this season, although Seth Jarvis a couple years ago, when everyone was like, oh yeah, he doesn't really have anything left to do in juniors, but it was juniors or NHL, and he forced their hand. So you never know. Felix may end up doing that same thing this preseason. We're just going to have to wait and see. Brind'amour said that the final roster cuts will come between Friday and Sunday. It's kind of what you expect. You want to get these two final preseason games out of the way, and then you go from there. Again, who's it going to be? We're just going to have to wait and see on that. As of right now, what the roster is looking like is going to be really interesting to see how that opening night roster is going to look, who all is going to make the cut. I'm really excited to see, who ends up making the cut for the team, because it's always fun to see who ends up getting a shot. Like Steph Nason last year, Jalen Chatfield last year. Those guys, they forced their hand. They just played that well, and I'm really, really excited to see what can happen here. And will we see Andrej Sekera on opening night? That's going to be fun to see, because with him, it was the 6 to 9 months recovery time when he tore his ACL, and opening night will actually be 7 months to the day of the injury. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. But it is definitely something that I am really looking forward to. And, I think that, you know, I think he'll make the opening night roster, but we're just going to have to wait and see. And we'll talk more about that in just a second, right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, the NFL season is here. And if you're wanting to go to a game, NHL season is also right around the corner. If you're wanting to go to any of these games, you shouldn't have to worry where you're buying tickets for where or when you're buying tickets for your next event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last minute deals, all in price views of your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets because that's never fun of trying to figure out where you're going to get your tickets and when you're going to get them, because there are days where you don't know if you're going to be off work, and then you turn out being off work and you want to go to a Hurricanes game or a Panthers game, or whatever. You want to go to that concert. So, last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, all of that stuff you can find on Game Time. Again, I've used it before. It's great, and it's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, not just sporting events. You can do concerts, comedy shows, theater, what have you. They got you covered, and you get views from all of the seats in the venue. You're not going to get surprised by an obstructed view or anything like that. You can see where it is, and their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, all that stuff. They got you covered. So again, Game Time is great to see. Again, you get to see the view from your seats, which I love. That's probably my favorite thing here. And Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of an event, even an hour after the event starts. It's the place to find last minute seats because, like I said, you don't always know if you're going to be able to go to something, and then you find out you are, and you want to go. Game Time has you covered. And again, they have exclusive flash deals, sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, everything you could want. So right now, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On NHL. LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, getting back to the opening night roster, we've talked about this a little bit already with Andrej Sekera. And like I said, I want to touch back on that. His return remains up in the air. Rod Brind'amour said it's basically just been we'll see when it comes to that. And, he's to the best of my knowledge, he's still in that yellow no contact jersey for training camp and all that. Again, Wednesday, tomorrow, we will know a bit more, as that is supposed to be the final practice day for them for the preseason. So maybe he's out of that, maybe he's not. I'll probably say he wouldn't be, but we'll just have to wait and see. I honestly think he will be on that opening night roster, but I also don't want to put all of my eggs in that basket either, because at the end of the day, you don't want to rush this return. You want to make sure he is 100% ready to go. That's so important here. You don't want to re-aggravate that injury and then him be out for another 6 to 9 months or whatever it may be. So at the end of the day, I want them to do what is right. And if that is waiting a little bit longer to put him in, then that's fine. It's going to suck, obviously, not seeing him on the opening night roster, of course. Of course, he'd get announced. He'd just be like on the bench or whatever in a suit, kind of like how Ethan Bear was. Some of those other guys a couple years, or was it last year? No, it was last year, wasn't it? But that's the big thing here is don't rush it. You know, again, yeah, he's in that time frame of being able to come back, but if he's not 100%, if he doesn't feel 100%, if the coaching and training staff it doesn't feel 100% about it, then let's sit him. Let's just wait. Let's make sure he is 100% ready to go. There aren't going to be any issues. That's where I'm at with that right now. Again, love to see him. It wouldn't surprise me if we do see him. I think we probably will, but I also don't want to rush that. Now, one guy that I did speak about earlier when we were talking about those roster cuts is Felix Storm. Yeah, he's drafted back in June, and he has really, really stood out this preseason and training camp. It was expected, when he was drafted after training camp, you just go back to Sweden, play there, all that. And honestly, that still very well could be the case. Uh, he is only 18 years old, 5'11, 170 pounds. Me and him are basically the same size. I got a few pounds on him, but that's it. So, if you've seen me in person, that's what you're getting there. Yeah, he's maybe in a little bit better shape than me, but you know, uh, so he, yeah, I don't know. I think it's honestly 50-50 when it comes to him making that opening night roster because if you do send him back, if he doesn't make that opening night roster, you're not gonna be able to get him, at all, for this season. And even if he is, just a healthy extra for a little bit, you just have to wait and see. Rod Brind'amour said decision will be made after the final preseason game. Again, I likened him earlier to some guys that we've seen break out in training camp and preseason over the past couple years. Seth Jarvis, Steph Nason, Jalen Chatfield. What's going to happen here? We've talked about already, over the offseason of the logjam that the Hurricanes have in terms of their roster. Obviously, Felix is a forward, not a defenseman, but you look at all the guys that the Hurricanes have on their roster, right now. Again, we know more roster cuts are going to happen, but you added so many guys this offseason. What's just going to happen? Where are these guys going to fit in? That are trying to make that cut, and we're going to look at the excuse me, the roster real quick, just to kind of look to see what this opening night roster could potentially look at or who's going to make the cut. You obviously figure Sebastian Aho, he's making it. Michael Bunting, he's making it. Jack Drury, guy that, was rumored, we never got official confirmation or anything, but, he had asked for a trade last year. Does that happen again? Paul Stastny didn't come back. And so it's kind of looking like Jack Drury may take over that fourth line center role. Does that happen? I don't know. Jesper Foss, he's obviously going to make it. Noel Gunler, he's a guy, I think he's going back to Sweden. Seth Jarvis, he's making it. Jesper Kotkaniemi, he's making it. Brendan Lemieux, he's an interesting one. Waddell said, and we'll talk more about, his mailbag stuff later, but just a brief tidbit here, said, they were wanting to add grit and toughness, or sandpaper as they call it, over the course of the offseason. Lemieux was a guy they went out and got along with Bunting to do exactly that, but he's also kind of an extra guy. So, is he going to be a guy that is, consistently in the lineup? And where is he going to play? He's listed as left wing. Does he play on the left? Does he play on the right? What's going to happen? Where are these guys going to slot in? Jordan Martinook, he's obviously going to be a guy that's on the roster. Martin Necas, he's going to be a guy that's on the roster. Steph Nason, I think he's probably going to be a guy that is going to be on the roster as well. He's probably going to kind of slot back in where he was back on that fourth line. Jordan Staal, obviously another one that will be there. Andrei Svechnikov, Teuvo Teravainen, and I mentioned Felix already. Now, as far as prospects go, Noel Gunler, again, don't see him making it. Blake Murray, same thing there. Just don't see that happening. God, I can never pronounce his first name. Vasily Ponomarev. He's an interesting one. I think he's honest. Him and Jamison Rees. I think those are going to be the two guys that are really competing with Jack Drury for that fourth line center role. How things end up shaking out, I don't know really. We've seen Ponomarev and Rees before. Both of those guys do look good, but how things end up shaking out, I just don't know. I think we're really going to find out a lot more over these last two preseason games as to what direction they are going to go in and how they end up deciding to do this stuff. Now, getting over to the defenseman side, this is where they've had a logjam of stuff. Yeah, we've talked about a lot this offseason. Brent Burns, he'll be there. Jalen Chatfield, he'll be there. Tony D'Angelo, he'll be there. And then Dmitry Orlov, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea, Jacob Slavin. We all know those are going to be guys that are on the Hurricanes roster come opening night. It's what are we going to do with some of these other guys? Dylan Coughlin, he's going to be an extra guy if he doesn't get traded. And Griffin Mendel, a couple other guys that, to be honest, I don't know how to pronounce their name. Sorry. I just don't want to butcher their name. So, again, we just have that logjam defensively. Antony Honka, excuse me. He's going to go back overseas. And we talked, and Ryan Suzuki, going back to the forwards as well. He's a guy I just don't see him making that cut. I would love for him too. He's been in the Hurricanes organization for a bit now. I've spoken to him, real nice guy, and I would want him to. But again, just injuries have really held him back over these first few years of his career. So we'll just see how things go. And getting back to the defenseman, we have such a logjam there. We talked a lot about, does Brett Pesce get traded? Does Brady Shea get traded this offseason? Both those are entering the last years of their deals. What's going to happen here? Brett Pesce's dad, Brian Pesce, he's kind of posted, and take this stuff with a grain of salt, of course, posted stuff on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, kind of, vague kind of stuff like will Brett, won't Brett, even, will he be traded? I just don't know. And I mentioned, again, of course, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea being another guy. I could see, a guy like Dylan Coughlin getting thrown in there in a trade, just as a little bit of a sweetener, a little, bit of an extra piece or whatever. And then, you go back to some of the forward prospects as well, seeing those guys, being put in. I think, a really interesting thing, of course, is going to be the goalies. Another thing Waddell mentioned in his mailbag is that they last season showed that you need 3 goalies, but this season is going to be really weird because all these guys are on one-way deals. Having an extra guy, obviously Frederick Anderson, he's going to be your number one. You know that. Then you have Peter Kochetkov and Antti Raanta as well. So how do things shake out there? That's going to be interesting. Because all 3 of those guys are going to be on the NHL side of things. So who do they go with? And how, because that's going to be just one more spot taken up there on the NHL side of things. Another guy sitting up in the press box, like we had guys doing last year, just having those extra guys, which is needed, but it's just such a weird predicament for them to be in. It's not one that we thought would happen. We honestly thought, Anderson, he'd be back. Kochetkov would be the number 2. Antti Raanta, he would go, but they brought him back on that 1-year deal, which I think is fine. It's not a move that I hate. They staggered the deals out this time, which I think was very, very smart. Anderson on the 2, Raanta on the 1. So I think, we'll see how this season goes because, you never know what could happen in terms of a trade or anything like that. Again, there's a whole lot of guys that could potentially be moved. And does Auntie Ranta get thrown in there in a trade because he would be the guy that does. But they seem like they wanted the three goalie situation. So maybe not. Maybe that's not the route they go. I definitely think Anderson Kochekov will be the tandem next year for sure. Like I thought it was going to be this year. But, that is what it is there. But this opening night roster, it's going to be really, really interesting to see. I think, for the most part, we kind of know who's going to be there. It's going to be some of these other guys that will they? Will Felix make it? Will Jameson make it? Will Ponomarev make it? Those are really the three guys for me that kind of stick out. Will they? Won't they? Another guy I didn't even mention in terms of defensemen that they end up picking up this offseason was Caleb Jones. That's an interesting one to see. I don't know about that one. I don't know. Again, just such a log jam defensively. I don't know. I honestly don't know because and we're going to talk about this in a little bit as well. When it comes to the AHL stuff, even if you put some of these guys, because I believe like Jones and some of the other guys that are on one-way deals. Okay, you got to put them on waivers and send them down, but you don't have an AHL affiliate. So how many guys can you really do that with? You don't want to use up, all your extra spots. And it's just really weird. It's a really weird position for the Nabia, and that I think we'll just know more as the week goes on. But Don Waddell did do a mailbag with Walt Ruff the other day, and I've mentioned a few things already, but there were a couple really big things that I did want to talk about, and we will dive into those right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, football season is here, so snap into the action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So, if you want to bet on your favorite team and they're not that good, hey, FanDuel has you covered. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over unders, and more. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and kick off the NFL season. Plus, you also got the NHL season right around the corner as well. MLB playoffs are coming up. Before we know it, NBA season is going to be here. So again, now is a great time to do that. So again, visit fanduel.com/locked on to kick off the NFL season. Visit FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So now, folks, getting back into Don Waddell's mailbag. There are a few, again, I mentioned a few things already. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about everything. So, you can go read that, so you so choose on the Hurricanes website. But they are, one thing that I really liked, someone asked, about how, they have Aho locked up long term. They have Svetch locked up long term. They have Kotkaniemi locked up long term. So, getting like the young core group of guys locked up long term is really big. And Waddell said that they are looking at locking up other young players long term. Obviously, Jacob Slavin, that's going to happen next offseason. Just hand the man a blank check and be done with that. But when it comes to the young guys, there are two names that really stood out to me in that regard, and that was Seth Jarvis and Martin Necas. Don't expect an extension announcement anytime soon in that regard. I think that both of the Jarvis will be an RFA. I don't remember about Necas of what he will be, if he will be an RFA or a UFA. Martinez. He will be an RFA again. So, the Hurricanes do have a bit more leverage in that regard. So, that's probably not going to be something that happens right away. I think, if one or both of these guys, ends up having a really good season, then okay. Then yeah, you may end up, seeing something, mid-season or whatever. But I really think we're really gonna have to wait and see, just how this season goes. Again, both of them are in contract years, so you can figure they're going to have really good seasons. Seth Jarvis, he's been looking really good over the course of his first 2 years in the NHL. Martinez just had a career year last year, so let's see if he can build off of that. But those are the two young guys for me that really stick out in terms of the young guys that they'd be wanting to lock up. They also took care of Kochekov as well. Obviously, not long term, but he's going. I believe it was a 4-year extension that he signed that will take into effect this year. So that's going to be interesting to see how things shake out there in terms of the young guys. So, we'll just have to wait and see on that one. A lot of the stuff we talked about today is just stuff you got to wait and see. We can talk about all we want, talk about till the cows come home right now, but just got to wait and see. We don't have time travel. We can't hit the fast forward button or anything like that. Just got to wait and see, with all of these guys, with extensions, with who makes the roster, all that stuff. Now, another thing, when it came to the AHL affiliate, that's kind of been the biggest thing this offseason, aside from inking Aho up long term. Now, he did say that the Finns and Swedes will play, back in their home countries. You figured that already, but they do have good relations with other NHL teams and they'll give them roster spots on their AHL teams. So that's fine. That's kind of what I expected, to be honest. Because we've gone this long without something being announced. I Waddell said, he didn't expect, that to hurt their development, but that's what he's gonna say. I'm personally not that optimistic about it. Because these guys, they're not going to be in the hurricane system. We just use Chicago. Yeah, they're independent now. That's what they wanted, but they're the last AHL affiliate, so we're just going to use them. Say you send Ryan Suzuki, to Chicago. He doesn't make that opening night roster. Okay, he's still in the hurricane system. They're going to know. That staff in Chicago is going to know what is expected. In Raleigh. Whereas, and yes, I know the other AHL teams, wherever it go, or be San Diego or God, there's so many. San Diego is just the first one that came to mind. Or Henderson, the Silver Knights, any of these teams, yeah, they're gonna know, okay, like, hey, this is kind of what we need. I'd assume, I don't know how those emails, Zoom calls, phone calls, whatever, go, but they're not going to be in the hurricane system. They're going to be in Anaheim system, Vegas, Minnesota, Boston, Washington, whatever, wherever they end up going, they're not going to be in the hurricane system. So, not saying it won't or it will hurt them. They may learn something new, that they wouldn't have learned in the hurricane system, which I think is really good and is a positive. But you're going from, another team system back to yours. I just don't know. That concerns me still a bit, but we're just gonna have to wait and see how that ends up shaking out. As of right now, nothing has been announced in terms of, hey, this guy is going here, that guy is going there, whatever it may be. It was talked about a couple weeks ago. The Hurricanes are interested in purchasing an AHL team. I think it may have been more of an expansion team they were looking at, which honestly doesn't surprise me either way, whether it be expansion or buying an existing one. Doesn't surprise me in the slightest. That's kind of the norm at this point. NHL teams owning their AHL teams. Does it happen for next season? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know the process that goes into that, nor do I want to, because it seems extremely complicated. You can't just swipe your debit or credit card for it. So, you know, that's going to be interesting to see how that happens. But I do honestly expect that to happen at some point. Waddell said this wasn't what they expected, for this offseason, but it is what it is. Okay. So we'll see what happens. I think, come next season, they will have an affiliate, whether it's an existing franchise that they do something with or they buy one outright. Obviously, if they get an expansion one, that'll take a little bit longer, but we just have to wait and see on that. They obviously do have their ECHL deal back with the Norfolk Admirals, which I do think is good, for some of those guys that aren't quite AHL ready. So, they'll be good, in that regard. Now, another thing, he did mention, is, when it came to the AHL stuff, is, that there are 4 or 5 players that teams want. Didn't specify whether it's AHL or NHL. I would assume AHL because, NHL, that mean a trade. But, so again, didn't say what teams, but but he did say we'll see more after, more roster cuts and all that stuff, which is what you expect at this point. So, would all this stuff you're just gonna have to wait and see. We will really know more after these final 2 preseason games. And honestly, probably a little bit more after tomorrow as well. Not as much after the games, but after that final practice session, I do think we'll know a little bit more about what we can expect over these next few days. And, then we got opening night on the 11th. I'm excited for it. I know you guys are as well. So let me know what you're excited for most about this upcoming season. Tomorrow, we will be doing a season preview, kind of my expectations for them and all that jazz. So let me know what your expectations are for the team, what you're most excited about, whether it be down in the comments on YouTube, over on the socials at locked on or at LO_Hurricanes, or myself at Jared Ellis _96. Let us know, guys. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of the day. And let's go, Canes.